I just had a friend who passed away like a week ago. And it's like, did he ever have the space to really open up about the pressure that he feels to provide and to be and to do? And has he ever really given the space to, or the tools to really open up about what was going on inside?
Welcome back to the Power and Purpose podcast. I'm super excited to have our guest here, Kyle.mitri. Thank you for being here. I got to ask my signature question. Who are you and who are you not?
I am a lover. I'm a warrior. I'm a husband. I'm pure love. I'm heart. I'm connection. I'm nature. And who I'm not. I don't know who I'm not. I don't have an answer for that.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. And just let you know, like I ask myself that question. It used to be every day. Now I kind of forget. But it just reminds me that it reminds me to recreate myself as I see fit. Like I don't have to be attached to like who I was yesterday or like the title I was yesterday or anything like that. So I became obsessed with that question and it never gets old. So thanks for playing along because every time I ask someone that, it just reminds me and the listeners of the possibilities of who we could choose to be on any given day and any given moment.
I agree. That's beautiful.
If you could describe the essence of your work in one sentence, not what you do, but more of like what you stand for, what would it be?
I create spaces for people so they feel safe enough to connect.
Yeah, yeah. And you guys are in for a treat because we're talking about such a juicy topic today around men's work and what men need. Tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, where were you before you started to do this work, and what was your turning point?
So I'd say like the beginning part of this trauma. Um, I was very suicidal and depressed from 10 years to like 25. I always felt like there was more to life. And there's that kind of that seeker of that question of like, I know there's more, but what is it? And I felt like I was just so constrained by my environment. And so what that did was I felt like I just had this weight pushing me down. And it just made me more and more depressed and more suicidal and just less connected with myself. And my image was it was very sad because I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror for like 15 years, you know?
Wow.
And
What
so,
did your life look like? Like, what were you doing? Who were you with? Were you by yourself? Were you with other people?
you know, my lifestyle and childhood were externally very beautiful. Growing up in South Africa, had a close group of friends and we didn't want for much. It was very beautiful and very simple, and it was just a kind of golden era of living. But my internal struggle it was so deep. And so from 9 to 10, there was this huge 180. I'm not really sure what it was, but definitely something of one of my contracts, spiritually speaking, that needed to shift and do the healing and doing the closing of the portal, right? So I felt like that was something that I needed to go through, which led me on a very, very long journey of self-love,
Mhm.
which is now I can look at myself in the mirror and just stare at myself for as long as I want and just like be in full adoration and full love. In such a very humble, beautiful way.
Mm.
Yeah,
And those are such drastic opposite points,
yeah.
right? Being like suicidal and then coming into self-love. A lot of people think like that type of transformation is almost not possible or it's like fake or not real or it only happens to certain people. So I want to chat a little, I want to dive into the details of that. Like, what was the turning point? How did you actually go from being depressed and suicidal into that?
My culture, my parents, everything around me, it's not necessarily spiritual nature. Like there's no yoga, there's no meditation, there's none of that. And so I was like, okay, I need to shift up my environment and like instead of just being so depressed, I feel like I need to be figuring out how to live. And so when I moved to Costa Rica, I didn't know they spoke Spanish. I was just like, fuck it, I'm out. Either I'm gonna kill myself for the 10th time or I'm gonna just like have to leave. And so a friend of mine said something about Costa Rica and he said this word called pura vida. which means pure life. And so it's a culture by which the people here live, and you don't really understand it unless you really live here for a while in Costa Rica, which is there's this idea that everything's beautiful always, and that's what pure life is about. And so it's such a present topic. And so I arrived, and immediately I was like, they all speak Spanish here, and I have no idea where I'm at. I arrived in this like kind of shanty house. There's cows everywhere. No one spoke English, and I was just like, holy shit, this is a big transition. And so I was just like, okay, I'm gonna roll with this. And so I ended up just staying and then falling in love with the culture and falling in love with the language and really getting to know both. And so I was in a beautiful place called Samara, and it was incredible. It was a space of like, I now needed to learn how to survive. I needed to learn how to be entrepreneurial, to make money. I went through all my money very quickly. My mom had to give me some money, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. And so really pushing myself to like live and figure life out and be entrepreneurial and really thinking outside the box really got me into this gear of like, who am I? And what do I want to do? And what do I like to do? And then from there, the questions started coming in of like, I feel there's more here. You know, this whole place is ripe with, we call it like a vortex. It's just ripe with amazing quartz underneath a lot of the land. It's very powerful, very strong, very feminine. And so you naturally, and I've been naturally open to it, you can go through your process. You can go through your traumas, your triggers, your this, your that. It gets brought up very quickly. So I had a lot of this stuff come up of like, okay, like who am I? And what's spirit? What's depth? What's like energy? And so I started feeling a lot of this. And one of my closest brothers, he's still one of my closest brothers. He was my mentor at that stage, spiritually speaking. So I'm like, bro, I'm feeling all of this stuff. Everything's energy. Like, this is amazing. He's like, cool. I'm going to give you these books to read. I'm going to give you these practices. This is what breathwork looks like. Within the first year, I went to sit with Santo Daime, which is ayahuasca. It's Brazilian tradition, Santo Daime Church. And we went to this place and had this amazing experience. And it just brought me so much closer back to myself and nature. And then that was the start of my like spiritual journey. It was just this like, I mean, both are parts of it.
Yeah.
The polarity breeds the next, but this was like, oh my God, I finally understand it. Like when I was a child. As a child, I feel like we know this is a game. It's fun. We can play with it. We can play with energy and all these beautiful things. And then unfortunately, it gets conditioned out of us. And so this was the kind of coming back to myself, as we say, like you coming back home, as you coming back to this realization that you are everything and that you are abundant. Life is beautiful in all the ways. And so that led me on my path of just really, getting to know myself and my my feminine space and what it looks like to cry and open up and communicate and really learn to hold space for my softness. And so that got me into a lot of work around working with women. And so I used to have a retreat company where we worked just primarily with women. And I had that with a friend of mine, Tanya. And that was helping women that were like 30 to 60. They're going through huge movements in life. Their kids have left. So now they're like, okay, now I have time to figure out who I am. And all the stuff is coming up of like, should I be with my husband? I don't have to, mother children anymore. So all the trauma and all these things were coming up. And so I provided the safety, the masculine safety for them to feel safe and open up with a non-judgmental mind. And so it was this polarity of like, okay, I feel safe in front of a younger man who I can really open up and share my story about and feel there's no judgment. And so I was reflecting that space of just like this soft, feminine, non-judgment space in a masculine body. And it was incredible. And it really got me into my own spaces, like my own reflection. I was just like, holy shit, like this is my softness, this is my feminine side. And so I did a lot of that work first. And in my
Mm.
experience, I find it so much more revealing when you start really going back into the feminine side before you kind of recorrect your masculine, your conditioned masculine side.
Mhm.
And so that's what started, as
Beautiful.
the matriarchy coming in now, this is what we're leading with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so beautiful. And Talk to us about the lone wolf mentality. Like, what was your relationship with it? Again, leading up to this turning point, or even after the turning point. How did your relationship with that lone wolf mentality shift, or what was it present? Those types of things.
So I love community. I love family. You know, I feel, and I feel like I'll speak collectively for this, for the masculine, is when we're feeling good and life is great, we like to be with community, and maybe open up and explore and be more extroverted. And when we're going through something is when we tend to really isolate and when we want a lone wolf. And I even notice that about myself still, even though I practice all this practice and I'm around community all the time and I have a really good sense of communication. I noticed myself really pulling away. And that was the original, was just like this pulling away and isolating and not letting anyone know what was going on. And then back here, now I'm like, oh wow, I have people who are talking about their traumas and their triggers and things that happened. And I'm sitting in ceremony and be like, oh wow, this person healed from rape or this or that. And so I was like, okay, well, if they're expressing this, then I think I'm okay to express what it was like to be a child and to be super suicidal and to, just get into very dark, violent modes. And so it provided the safety of just really communicating the story and not being and living in the story, but just I feel safe to communicate the story because I think it hits home for people. And I think people can resonate with it. And so that's the reason why I give it, the more I speak it, the less energy it holds.
Yes, yes.
Right?
I always say that compassion is the antidote to shame. And you could tell me if you believe in that, if you agree with it or not. But it's like when we're isolated, my belief is like when we're isolated and we're not sharing, that shame can stay a lot longer, you know? But when we share, not all the time, but if we're sharing with the right people, right space, right environment, if there's alignment there, then people can hold compassion for us. And that's the antidote to shame. Those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's all about permission. You know,
Mhm.
in all my groups that I lead, I say, I met a brother this morning and, they're suffering in silence. That no, 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 it's cool. Like I'm having, I spoke to him and this I can apply to pretty much all men. And I'm going to blanket that statement. And the reason is hey, brother, what's going on? What you said in circle the other day, I wanted to check in. I'm going through this. I have that. I've got all this. This is happening. But it's okay. I'll get through it. I'm a man. I'm strong. I'll get through it. That's what we do. And so my retort was, okay, so what does support look like to you right now? And a lot of men have no idea how to answer that question. It's fascinating. I need help. Three biggest words in men's work. And so I was like, okay, brother, this is how it works. So when you ask for help in the group, you are giving other men permission to feel safe to ask for help. When you are saying, I'm taking care of myself because I'm not feeling well, you're giving permission to those men around you. And the more permission you're giving, the more safety you're building. And
Mhm.
so I really emphasize, getting men to lead with the space of vulnerability, but not victimization, kind of like, oh, this is what I'm going through. Everyone,
Right.
call me this, that, like, babe, take care of me, and then codependency sets in. So it's the space of like permission. The more we get to ask, and the more we can communicate where we're at, the more permission we're giving to each other, and therefore that safety is building. You know, and I wouldn't say it's shame. I don't think it's shame. I think it's just like this maybe guilt. I should be doing better. I should be more open about this. I should be crushing this. I should be getting through this. And there's so much, I think, guilt associated with opening up. I think guilt may be associated with not doing something, and shame is, I think, staying quiet about it. And so I think they're very similar in their context, but again, I think it's like mirrored on what we associate it with. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, I tend to use the word guilt with men and also shame, you know. And so, yeah, I think it's just contextual, to be honest.
Yeah, beautiful. That makes so much sense. Now, there's a deep-seated myth that men have to be strong all the time. You know, like they have to wear this armor and like, and obviously, yes, men have a natural masculinity, like a natural strength, you know, collectively speaking, but there also is this expectation for them to always be strong. What are the hidden costs of that belief, both personally and collectively?
I call it like, there's this thing, I call it like, what do I call it? This parental pressure. And it's the consistency of what we're doing, of putting pressure on ourselves.
Hmm.
And so collectively, I think we just have that. Personally, we just have this idea that we're needing to accomplish, we're needing to get value and purpose. And so by being in the space of not being able to share, it just keeps us like, that's our purpose. Our purpose isn't to complain and whine, it's just to do. And so it takes us out of the space of being. And so for me, it's like, the cost of that is huge because it's, I just had a friend who passed away like a week ago. And it's like, did he ever have the space to really open up about the pressure that he feels to provide and to be and to do? And has he ever really given the space to, or the tools to really open up about what was going on inside? And so I think this builds up over time, and that pressure and that guilt, that anxiety, that pain just builds up over time. And then, collectively, we're just losing men left and right. The amount of men that we're losing is a rapid rate, and teenager boys as well. Like it's astronomical. And because I feel 100% we don't feel safe enough to open up about the things that are going on inside. And we don't feel like we have the tools nor the outlet to do that. And so for me, the fundamentals of any work with men is men circles, the fundamentals. Like, you can do all these other things on top of that. That's great. That's refining the spear, that's sharpening the spear. But at the base level, where the real work is meeting once a week and feeling safe enough to express what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. What do women need to know about men needing safety?
I would say ask the question, what do you need to do to feel safe in this relationship? And I say that to my men as well. I'm like, ask your woman, what do you need to feel safe? What will help you surrender a little bit more in our relationship?
Hmm.
Is
That's
there
a
something,
powerful question.
right? And so for men, and that's the thing for women as well, they can ask the men. And, I think, a big one is words of affirmation, one of the love languages. I think for men, I find that to be one of the most powerful. Just that recognition of the things that we're doing. That's all we want. But at the same time, to go a little bit deeper, babe, what do you need to feel safe right now? What does that look like?
Mm,
Like, let's just close our eyes and imagine what it feels like to feel safety. And the man might be like, I just want to be held
yeah.
and I want to cry and I want to let it go. Right? And I want to be nurtured and I want to be held. And it's something, unfortunately, that we're so scared to ask for because that the feeling of that makes us weak, right? And a feeling of that makes us feel like we're not man enough to hold our woman then if we're asking for that level of vulnerability. And so we put ourselves in this corner of like, no, I got this. I got to suffer in silence because otherwise I'm not strong enough to feed the family.
You know, that question, I had chills when we just sat with that for a second here in this conversation because um, it would open up so much intimacy. And I've never asked, you know, a guy that I was dating, and I'm sure in your circle, right? You do this work, you probably, you know, coach men or even women to have those types of conversations. But yeah, the amount of intimacy and closeness and realness, you know, like not having to like wear the armor inside the relationship or in that in the private time. It's just like just being real, just being transparent. Like that would benefit both parties, both people so deeply.
But it's got to be done correctly.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you what, in my experience, um, I don't think women want full honesty. I feel they want to feel a man's vulnerability, but that full honesty, I feel, can make them question his strength. And so there's a double-edged sword to this because I've heard it both ways. Okay, my man's too vulnerable. He's too feminine. Like he's opening up too much, and I need a man now. And so it's like, and these poor guys are like, what do you mean? Like I'm just coming out of this like toxic masculine like structure that was imposed, and now I'm like trying to feed into this and like really open up. And so there's a way to do that. There's a way to do that through intentional communication. There's a way to do that where it's like, okay, babe, this is, a non-judgmental space. We're going to open up communication once a week where we can ask each other these questions. And it's done in a space of safety. It's done in some container work. And that's like working on the relationship. So I feel like, yes, these questions are amazing and they provide so much intimacy, but I think it's also good to have a bit of structure around them when you're implementing this. Because the other side of that is take all of my vulnerability because she's asking for it and she cannot hold it.
Hmm.
And it's not up to you to hold my full vulnerability. This is why I do men's work. This is why I have my circle. So I can open up there and I can come to you and be like, babe, I feel clean. I feel clear. Here's my vulnerability, but I'm not.
I love that. So that's your idea of that balance is having a men's group, doing the men's work. So you have that container, and then you're still opening up in the relationship with discernment. Is
For
that
sure.
about right?
That's exactly right.
How does a man know when he feels safe?
Um, First, I think the work is internal safety first.
Hmm.
So it's not up to you to make me feel safe. It's up to me to make me feel safe, which means being comfortable to express where you're at with other men, being comfortable in your own body, feeling comfortable with your own sexuality, loving parts of yourself in all the ways. And so that's the work. And so I'm not asking you to hold that for me when I enter into a relationship. So this is a lot of the work we do prior to entering a relationship.
Hmm.
And I feel like the safety feels like I don't need to be grabby and I don't need to feel anything to make me feel whole. Because then I'm just nervous and I feel unsafe. And I need you to make me feel better. I need this to make me feel better. I need alcohol to make me feel a little bit more confident, a little weed to make me think less. And so I think these little distractions, I need sex, so I need this, so I need to watch porn. And all of these little distractions, I think, take away from building our internal confidence and our internal safety. And then with that, we can now be, oh, I feel good. I feel good alone. I don't need these distractions to make me feel okay. And so this is where the work comes in, is how often are you practicing the space of fasting? Fasting in all the ways. And when you're practicing the space, you're allowed to come back to yourself and be like, okay, this is a space of practicing fasting, which it could be fasting from porn, masturbation, woman, alcohol, all these things helps you just kind of plug the leaks and puts your energy back in. And it brings it back in to help like restore this kind of internal gin energy, we call it. And that I feel in my experience helps me feel more safe in my body.
Mm, beautiful. Because it's just like coming back home to yourself.
Yeah, like we're always in the process of remembering, oh shit, okay, cool. I get to come back to myself. I get
Yeah.
to do the work, remember that this is all like fun and it's a game. But we're in it, where we choose to forget again. And then we come back and we just kind of do the cycle. And which is part of the human experience.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So that was some tidbits on how men can create that safety internally by fasting from certain things, distractions, whatever it is, if it's the porn, if it's the food, if it's, I don't know, social media. And then what are some external shifts? how, going back to that question, when do men or how do men know that they're safe? Internally, we kind of got a good grasp.
I think it's kind of one and the same, to be honest. Like externally, it's just gonna mirror what's happening internally. So you're gonna feel good whether you have a partner or not. You're gonna feel good whether you have lots of money coming or not. You know, you're gonna feel good if you go out and you don't drink, or if you have a beer. You know, so I think it's just like I'm pretty good either way, and I feel just safe in my body. One thing is are you running away from something or are you running towards something?
Mm,
So often when we're running away from something, it's I don't feel safe to feel this because it's too intense. It could be a breakup, a death, or whatever it might be. And then I'm trying to like run away from it and try to distract myself because I don't want to feel it. So I don't feel safe in my body enough to feel that. When you do feel safe in your body to feel that, you can go, okay, cool. It's time to go back in, really see what's going on, and sit with these emotions and just witness what's going on. And so then I feel safe enough to witness what's happening inside. And I'm not running away from it. And so a lot of that work is predicated on how do I do this in circle first, generally speaking. And then what happens from there is you build a bit of a repertoire. And then you can start to go, okay, cool. Maybe I can practice some of this at home. Some like mindfulness, some somatic work. Maybe I can just go in and be in a space of more witness. And okay, cool. So it's like step by step that helps you just come back to yourself with a little bit of tools.
so amazing. What are some challenges that men face when?
What I see a lot is they come to circle once or twice and they're like, oh my God, I feel amazing. I just dumped. I just dumped everything. And I feel, wow, I feel amazing. And then they like don't come back. Or it will feel amazing and then they'll be hit with a challenge and then they won't come back because they're going to isolate and lone wolf because they don't have the tools or the repertoire or the consistency of coming to circle. So when you come into circle, when you don't want to, you're showing up for the brothers who are not coming to circle,
Mm,
right? You're giving them permission and you're saying, well, I'm showing up regardless. And that's where the work comes in because men scare way easier than women. We run away so quickly from everything. We'll cheat on you because we feel scared that you're going to leave us. You know, we'll have huge abandonment wounds. And I'm blanketing the statement, but from my experience, this is it. And so we'll do whatever we can to fuck up the relationship, to cheat on you, just in case you cheat on us or in case you fall out of love with us. And then we're in the space of like, I don't want to feel that. I'd rather mess this up prior because I have abandonment wounds and I can't.
what you're saying is the inconsistency of doing the work. Like they might get those great results and then they're like, oh, I probably don't need it anymore. Or they run into a challenge and then they don't keep that consistency. And
Yeah.
then running from that vulnerability um, because of maybe past abandonment wounds. Is there any other challenges just to give people an idea of like what, what this work is like, what they can expect, what challenges might come their way, anything else?
There's a few things that I do with men in this space. I feel when they are really going back inside and creating the space to actually see what's going on and to see the things they've suppressed for so long, there's a lot of guilt and shame associated with not speaking out, with doing something because they were unconscious at that time. And by I mean unconscious, they were just acting from this old program that maybe was not healthy. So how they treated women, what they did to friends, how they acted in business. And so as you're opening all of this up, some of this stuff will come up and go, shit, I just opened up like a can of whoop ass. You know what I mean? And so it's going to come back and go, oh my shit, like now I feel really fucking guilty because I haven't been living up to my word. I've been cheating on my wife. I've been doing so many bad things and I don't want to look at it. And so it's kind of like, okay, I'll get into this, but oh shit, that dark side is really bad. And so they kind of will like again go, oh shit, actually I don't want to look at it. It's too rough. And then they'll run away again until they're ready to just actually own it and look at it. And it will come back at one stage 100%. There's no way to run away from your things. It will always
Mm.
come back at you.
The only way through is through, right?
The buffalo, you know? The buffalo runs towards the storm. The cows run away from the storm.
I haven't heard that before, and I love it.
Yeah. So know
Yeah.
this is gonna come, but it will end quicker if you just run towards the storm. You know, as long as you want to run away, I mean, it'll always be there. You know,
Yeah.
in the back of your mind.
Yeah. And the men that are consistent and that stay with this work and they push through the vulnerability hangover, they push through the guilt and the shame or the integrity issues or challenges that they might be mirroring back to themselves. Um, what do they end up feeling? Like, is it acceptance? Is it compassion? Is it just connection? Is it just feeling seen or heard? And I'm sure everyone is different, but what are some of the common ones that you experience or hear?
Happiness, straight up. And happiness means, in my opinion, when you are offloading all of the guilt and the shame that you have off of your shoulders, you feel so much lighter. Everything feels brighter. And so what I see is faces that come more often to my circles, you know, they get so much benefit because they start to sink in more, they start to feel more safe, and we have quite a sharp masculine container that we create, but within that you can open up. And so they develop the space of actually like building their container to hold their community, their family, their kids. And so they're learning to use these tools also for their kids and be like, hey guys, let's do, a 3-word check-in before we have dinner. So how's everyone feeling? You have a multitude of emotions. Let's choose 3 words. Or you can do a 1-minute share of how you're feeling right now. And so it's like we're helping them kind of expand the container of what they can hold. So they're more present with the people and the things in their life. That's the base. And so these men will naturally go, wow, I feel lighter. I feel happier. I feel like I have room to move and to breathe. I feel like I'm now not identifying with the pain as much. I feel like I'm in a space where I can communicate to my partner, like, what are your needs? And so once you're like, what are your needs? And she's just like, I just want you to like listen. And so men just, they have no idea how to listen. They always want to fix because it's in our nature. So, which is not a bad thing. We just want to fix stuff because that gives us purpose, right? So there's this understanding where it's like, okay, cool. Why don't I just listen to you? And when I'm listening to you, that makes you feel safe. And so it's these little tools where it's like, oh, well, my woman feels safe, my partner. Wow, life just feels a little bit easier because she feels safer, or she doesn't have to maybe lead as much as she was before. I can take a little bit of that leadership. I feel more empowered. I feel like I'm not being emasculated because I'm stepping into my power more. That means she can also fall into her feminine a bit more. And so there's this beautiful polarity that's happening. I'm more conscious and aware of my children. And so I can really, soften and be more like witnessing as opposed to like judging. And so a lot of this ends up to, oh, I just feel more happy.
Mm, amazing. I love that. And I love what you said about expanding our capacity because I believe that in our transformational journeys, that's what it's all about. We have all these different ways that we could do it, and everyone has different needs on what they need in order to do it. But it is expanding our capacity. And I have a theory that in order to expand our capacity, sometimes we need to collapse with where we're at in order to kind of allow that to like rebuild. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's this natural contraction and expansion for everything. We're onions, so every layer is going to be different. No matter how many tools I do, no matter how many circles I go to and blah blah blah, all the things, I'll still get hit with stuff. I'll get into a relationship which brings out my fucking deepest insecurities. I'll be going through some health stuff which will absolutely take me down and just like question like what am I doing? Where am I going? And so there is a bit of a breakdown to break through. And all that means is, okay, dude, the pillars, there's a few pillars there that are not strong. So we're going to have to break them down. So we're going to rebuild them so we can move forward and expand our container. And sometimes it requires a bit of a breakdown. And that's okay. And so can we learn to accept that that is just a part of life? Because life is actually about slowing down. The more present I feel I become, the longer life becomes,
Mm.
and the more enjoyable it becomes.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. The more present you are, the more enjoyable everything is. Even eating a strawberry, that you can practice and become and just focus on eating that strawberry without scrolling on your phone at the same time, without having a conversation, like being so present, and you'll find that you really enjoyed that experience with the strawberry. It's amazing.
Let's relate it to men, because I don't think the strawberry thing's gonna work with men. Let's blanket this a little bit. Like next time you're making love, whoever's listening, don't focus on the climax.
Okay.
I want you to stop midway and just look into your partner's eyes for like 20 seconds and just feel her. And, or I want you to think of next time you're in nature and understand that like you could really just die tomorrow, like literally, which happens all the time. And so, is there a moment when you're in nature, where you're around your people, you can just take a little bit of a moment and go, oh, this is not going to be here forever. Wow, isn't that interesting? And so it just shifts you back to how impermanent everything is. And so the way for me to become present is to go, wow, everything's going to end. Great.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we're going to die. Imagine that.
But
And
it
you're like,
keeps us, I totally get it though. It keeps us from taking things for granted, you know? Like we could take nature for granted if we, if we're all distracted and we're doing a hike and we're on our phone and we're talking, we're doing all this stuff. But if you really just drop into nature and appreciate it, or you drop into your intimacy time with your partner and you're making love and you take the suggestion Kyle just gave you and like you really drop in and enjoy it and like be in that moment almost like nothing else exists. Yes, it's like that presence is medicine for so many things. Absolutely.
oh,
Yeah. So, how is some of the other tools and methods different from men's work? How is talk therapy different? I mean, we kind of know, but like what's your take on it? Like how are some of the other tools and methods different from having a container like yours or being a part of a container like yours?
so, one thing that we do is we don't fix. Naturally we want to touch and want to hold, and we want to comfort when guys are crying and when they're screaming and when they're letting shit go, like no touching. Let them go through their process. And so we're not here to fix you. You can talk a little bit or a lot. You can cry or not cry. Like we want you to be able to be in that space where you're just able to speak and feel comfortable, letting more and more go. And then eventually you'll get to your own answer. And so time, consistency builds safety. That's the basics. And so when I'm in other containers, what I sometimes do is like, once you finish your share, I say, okay, would you like a reflection? Would you like feedback? Or would you like just to be witnessed right now? And so we're not trying to fix anything. And when we say, do you want like, a reflection or feedback? It's like, let's get curious. So it's not like, hey, bro, you should do this. It's, hey, I'm curious. Have you done this? Have you tried this? How did that feel? What does that look like? And so a process of like inquiry helps the person go, oh, my medicine's inside. So you can, I'm just diving in a little bit more. And we don't need to fix people because they're not broken. No.
Yes. 100% agree with that. Amazing. Wow, so much in this conversation. Um, yeah, it's been such a pleasure. So as we start to wrap up, is there a tip for men who are in the space where they don't feel safe in whatever capacity, however that shows up for them? What would be like their next step?
Find a men's group, either that's operating within your vicinity, which I'm sure you can find nowadays, and or online. There are tons of men's groups online. I think the Uncivilized Man, he has a bunch of, I think like something like 400 to 700 men that are now joining circles. I'm also going to be expanding more of like online circles. So it's going to be like a monthly thing where men can just come in and be in circle, and we create a format for them and just build that consistency over time. And so for me, it's now very accessible to do this. So
Hmm.
if you want, reach out to me and I can start to put you in touch with what that looks like. Um, and I'm sure Vanessa will put the link below. Um, that is one. Um, two, I'm always a big fan of mentorship. And so if you feel like there's a man in your vicinity that is in this work that you trust, that you feel comfortable with, maybe organize some time where you meet on a weekly basis, and just check in and have someone just like be there for you and like, give you some, be there to provide some, feedback or just like space holding for you when you need. And so sometimes we do this through golf and all these other things, but if we can be a little bit more intentional about why we're hanging out with someone, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Are there any books that you would recommend to anyone, men or women, around vulnerability or just around anything that we've talked about today?
For sure. I think one of the predicators of this work, which I love, is called Way of the Superior Man.
That's so good. I read that in like 2 days.
Yeah, it's good for men and it's good for women.
Yeah,
It's very, very good for both. Um, King, Magician, Warrior, Lover, the archetypes, which is really, really good. That is like a beautiful blueprint for men to just realize, oh, we are these archetypes, and this is how we embody them. This is the immature child version. This is what the mature version looks like. Also, these shadows, how they play into how we operate. And so it's a great blueprint to understand yourself as a man right now.
amazing.
I'd say those two books to start for sure.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. And so what is your website? Of course, everything is in the description, but what's your website? How can people reach you?
Sure. So right now, Kyle Mitri, and I have my resiliencyproject.me, and that is my men's retreat company as well that I have with two other men.
Amazing. All right. So good. Any last words, a quote, a last message that you want to end on a strong note with, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. So one of my favorite quotes I love. I'm going to give you two. This too shall pass. I think it was Marcus Aurelius, maybe. One of my favorite quotes means everything will stop, everything will end, and something will begin. And my next quote is to know and not to do is not to know, which means if you know it and you're not taking action behind it, you're not really doing it.
Beautiful and
Yeah.
powerful. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for your presence, your energy, your wisdom. Thank you for being here. Namaste, everyone.